to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to dive into the story between Marc Columbo and Joe Judge as we're starting to get more and more details to the story. I may have another video up later today. I was going to do one on Jason Garrett, Daniel Jones, and the New York Giants offense, talking about how it's improved over the last 5 or 6 weeks. I'll probably still have that up later today, so hopefully y'all check that out. But I wanted to jump into this story that is now being tweeted out by, I think it's Michael Silver. He's got almost 200,000 followers on Twitter. And he was, kind of piggybacking off some of the things that Kim Jones had to say about the situation between Marc Columbo and Joe Judge. Now, take these quotes for what you will, because one, these are probably coming from Marc Columbo. He doesn't name his source in this, and if it's not from Columbo, it's somebody who's probably very strongly connected to Marc Columbo. If I had to guess, he's probably very upset, and he's going to the media to try to defend himself. The other thing I'm going to say is this: Marc Columbo was never Joe Judge's hire, and I think anybody would realize that. Every other coach we brought in here had ties to Joe Judge outside of the offensive coordinator, that, of course, being Jason Garrett. With Jason Garrett came the offensive line coach from Dallas, who Jason Garrett had coached and who he had as an offensive line assistant for years, and then ultimately his offensive line coach. He probably sold Judge on the fact that he thought his blocking scheme would fit best for his offense. So let's take all that into account. Let's also take into account some of the quotes I'm going to bring up from Andrew Thomas's former collegiate coach while at Georgia, talking about how poor of a job the New York Giants were doing in terms of technique with his former left tackle, who has struggled mightily with the New York Giants until the last 3 weeks or so, which is when this timeline kind of adds up. That is when Joe Judge started to step in, supposedly, and tried to correct not just Andrew Thomas, but the entire offensive line. There's a quote in this where he talks about Nick Gates and how Judge tried to change his technique. And at the end of the day, that's Joe Judge's job. Joe Judge is the head coach. Joe Judge is the CEO. His job is to oversee everybody. He doesn't want to step in and do too much coaching, but when he feels like he has to improve the situation, he will do it. And that's exactly what he did in this situation. And I don't know what the whole uproar is about. At the end of the day, Marc Columbo doesn't have 2 legs to stand on. Sure, can you be upset? I've seen some people on Twitter saying he has a right to be upset because you're trying to change his technique and going above his head as a coach. Sure, you could be upset, but that's Joe Judge's job. It's not his job to be your friend. If you're not doing your job properly, he is going to try to do his best to correct it. Not to mention, you were never a Joe Judge guy. So, we're going to jump into some of the quotes regarding this story, talking about some of the things that the former coach had to say from Georgia, as well as some of the quotes that came out on the story. So, let's jump right into it. Before we jump into the quotes, I want to pull up some of the things that came out from Andrew Thomas's collegiate coach and mentor while at Georgia. This was the headline of a New York Post article on October 26th. Andrew Thomas's draft mentor can't believe how far the Giants rookie has fallen. Of course, Andrew Thomas struggled mightily over those first 5 or 6 weeks or so. I'm going to be candid here because I'm really upset for Andrew on this. Andrew told SNY after watching Thursday's Giants-Eagles game in Philly. What I saw Thursday night, I see completely different techniques than he used at Georgia. I don't see his feet getting set, and I see his hands bouncing all over the place, like he's punching a guy like a machine gun or something. And I'm assuming that Joe Judge probably saw the same things, and he said, no, this can't go on. Let's also take into account that the New York media, or the media in general, is going to do everything they can to attack the New York Giants and Joe Judge whenever they get the opportunity. Joe Judge has been attacked by the media since he took the job. People already said before he coached one game that he was going to be too much of a disciplinarian. You saw it on ESPN. You saw it with some of the New York writers. People criticized him for practicing in the rain. People criticized him for using tennis balls in workouts to try to improve his, the technique of his cornerbacks not to commit defensive holding penalties. And there were several other instances that they've been on Joe Judge's back. And any opportunity that the media gets to go after Joe Judge, they're going to do it. Listen, at the end of the day, Marc Columbo made Andrew Thomas look like he didn't belong in the NFL, the 4th overall pick. Joe Judge fixed him seemingly in a couple of practices. So I don't even know what the big uproar is about. Next thing, when he was at Georgia, he controlled guys with his hands. So I see something completely different than I saw at Georgia. And my question is, why are you doing different things than you did? I mean, he was the best tackle in the country. And right now, it's like, oh my God. So, I mean, there you go. So now you know it's not just from one set of eyes. It's from the same guy who coached him well at Georgia. Now we're going to jump into some of the quotes regarding the story that came out from Michael Silver on Twitter. Here's the first part of the thread. As Kim Jones reported, the incident that led to the abrupt firing of Giants offensive line coach Marc Columbo did involve Columbo calling head coach Joe Judge a very dirty name. Now, I'm not too sure what that dirty name was. Maybe put your dirty mind to the task and try to figure out what it may be. However, tensions began weeks earlier after an incident on the practice field, and now they're going to get into the backstory of what led up to this explosion. Here's the second part of the thread. According to a witness, Judge corrected the technique of center Nick Gates during a practice several weeks ago, and Columbo disagreed with the correction. Judge reacted angrily, and from that point on was frosty towards the offensive line coach. Ultimately, Judge brought in Dave DeGuglielmo. Okay, so here's the thing. Maybe Judge shouldn't have went over his head. Maybe he should have done it nicer. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's not Joe Judge's job to be your friend. It's his job to make sure he's getting the most out of the coaches and to make sure he's getting the most out of the players. And what we know from Joe Judge is he is a no-nonsense guy. Now, he seems to be the type of guy that is forgiving, and if you're willing to learn and move on and show him respect, I'm sure Columbo would probably still have a job. I'm sure the way that Columbo reacted resulted in his termination. Next thing. The Giants line had struggled early in the season, especially rookie left tackle Andrew Thomas, but things had begun to improve, and the unit has performed very well during the team's 2-game winning streak. Columbo was popular with the players, and they were in a good zone. Okay, so first thing I'm going to say is this. We don't know if Columbo was popular with the players. I would guess that he was, though. That was his reputation when he came in here. That was his reputation in Dallas, that he was a rah-rah guy, guys that the players liked playing for. It was one of the things that I liked about him when he came in here. He was just, he was an offensive lineman about 7 or 8 years ago, so he's still relatively young and a guy that's probably relatable to the players. So I suppose that is probably very accurate. But as far as the unit performing better over the last 2 games, well, that could be directly correlated to when Joe Judge started paying more attention to the offensive line. So Joe Judge probably saw that and said, I can't have this guy here anymore. He's not willing to buy into my corrections. I need to get a guy in here who's willing to fit my scheme. Then he goes on to talk about the coaching staff and, one more thing, and then I'll get into the rest of that. Judge's decision to bring in DeGuglielmo to help Columbo flew in the face to that, and the offensive linemen were confused. Tensions escalated, and when Judge began ripping Thomas during a film session, Columbo stepped in to defend the left tackle and ultimately swore at Judge. Now, this is just hearsay. This isn't on tape. We don't know exactly what was said. Joe Judge, his reputation coming in here. He's a hard ass. He's a disciplinarian. He's a guy that's not scared to get at you to try to motivate you to get better. So maybe he did get a little bit in Andrew Thomas's face. And Columbo, I get it's defending his player, but then he swore at Judge in front of the team, and that only added to the tension. The next quote I was going to bring up for you guys was this, and this is where they started going after the coaching staff and how they're, full of themselves. Obviously, Judge is the head coach, and he is free to hire and fire whom he pleases. But his personality style has been off-putting to some. The former Patriots assistant and some of those who came with him from New England. Now, you're talking about guys like Patrick Graham. You're talking about a number of coaches on this coaching staff. Brett Bielema came from New England. I'm sure there's definitely a few others that came over from the New England Patriots. So that's who he's referring to here. And some of those who came with him from New England have exuded an alarming aura of haughtiness. So they've been full of themselves, right? Here's the next quote. In making the case that the Patriot system is supreme, Judge and some ex-New England have assistants have openly denigrated the abilities of Tom Brady, claiming he struggles when it comes to throwing deep, throwing outside the numbers, and moving in the pocket. Well, that's a matter of opinion, and I have always been consistent about Tom Brady. I thought Tom Brady's a very intelligent quarterback, probably one of the hardest workers in the history of football, but if you go back and watch last year, everybody said he lost arm strength. I don't think there's anything false to that. The Patriots offense struggled mightily. And if anything, it's giving credit to the New England Patriots. It's saying that their system gets the most out of their players. I consistently have said that throughout my whole life. So I don't disagree with that comment at all. Next up, to their credit, Judge and his assistants do acknowledge that the 6-time Super Bowl champion is intelligent. Of course. They've also claimed that the Giants' offensive personnel is equal to what they had in New England in past years. That's also accurate, by the way. Tell me how many superstars the New England Patriots have had on their offense. Last year, they traded for Mohamed Sanu, who was probably their most talented receiver when they brought him in, outside of Gettleman, who was hurt. It's not like they've had this unbelievable talent. They have players that buy into the system. Next up, bottom line, Judge and his assistants have done some very good things lately, turning around a Giants team that looked hapless and injected it back into the division title race, albeit in the NFL's worst division in recent memory. Don't care, they're in it. Finally, yet the Columbo fiasco and the way it played out over the past few weeks remains an open sore. And as they finish out their bye week, many of the team's offensive linemen are unsure what the change will mean and whether they'll have to relearn techniques on the fly, etc. And I'm sure that there's probably a little bit of uncertainty when you make a coaching change mid-season like that. Probably something that they didn't expect. Maybe they saw it coming with the tension building up between Judge and, of course, Marc Columbo. But Dave Guglielmo's a guy that I respect. He's got results. He was great with the Indianapolis Colts. And if the New York Giants aren't bought into Joe Judge at this point, they're never going to be bought in. And if the New York Giants fans aren't at least bought into Joe Judge with the job he's done so far, well, I think 99% of the fan base probably is, because he's done a hell of a job. He has this team fighting each and every week, and I trust Joe Judge. He's a very intelligent guy. He seems to get the most out of his players, so I'm sure that he made the right decision. Columbo, get your resume ready, but do me a favor. When you start looking for jobs, make sure you don't list Joe Judge as a reference. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.